How do you think astrology works? Do you think astrology works because the cosmos is cyclical, or is the cosmos cyclical because astrology works? It's like this. What's the bigger idea, netball or sport? So netball has a collection of rules and agreements and protocols that runs it, right? But they are a subset of these other ideas called sport, which we don't really articulate, but they're there because netball has to be a subset of it, and cricket has to be a subset of it, and in a way so that they don't clash or invalidate each other. Bringing it back to astrology, what gets Hellenistic astrology to work, and sidereal astrology, and traditional, and Vedic, and Mayan, and Chinese astrology? What gets all of these things to work? What's the sport that is above all these different systems that allows them to work without crashing into each other or invalidating each other? What might we call that? Welcome to the Bast Strait, the treacherous stretch of water separating us here in Tasmania from mainland Australia, or as we like to say, the good island from the shit island. Now, in October of 1978, Bast Strait was the site of one of the most fascinating and frankly terrifying UFO incidents in the whole world, and certainly in Australia, and that was the mid-air disappearance of 20-year-old cadet Fred Valentich. Valentich picked up his plane after work and after class on the 21st of October, early evening from Moorabbin Airport in Melbourne. And he took off in his little Cessna and flew over Port Phillip Bay, Melbourne essentially, to Cape Otway, to a lighthouse where he was essentially going to turn left and fly over the Bast Strait to land at a place called King Island. And he got a little ways out into the strait after about 7, and he radios back just to confirm that there are no other aircraft at his altitude or below him, below 5,000 feet. And he hears back from the tower that there isn't. And that begins the most fascinating UFO pilot recording that we still have, and I'm going to play that now.
45 minutes into the flight, there began an extraordinary exchange. Steve Roby was the last person to speak to Fred. To this day, he's still shaken by the memory. This is a transcript of the beginning of their remarkable conversation.
Frederick said, "Melbourne, this is Delta Sierra Juliet. Is there any known traffic below 5,000? I said,
Delta Sierra Juliet, no known traffic.
It seems to me there's a large aircraft below 5,000.
I got him to describe the aircraft. It is 4 bright, it seems to me like landing lights. Then he said, the aircraft has just passed over me at least 1,000 feet above. He was describing it doing some fairly strange things.
Delta Sierra Juliet, it seems to me that he's playing some sort of game.
He's flying over me 2-3 times at speeds I could not identify.
After that strange metallic scraping sound, no one saw or heard from Fred Valentich ever again. Now, some years later, a piece of the same model of Cessna washed up on another island in the strait. Wasn't his. So that was it. Now you might think, sure, so a plane gets lost in the ocean. Well, firstly, the Bast Strait isn't actually that big. When I fly, which I do regularly, to Melbourne, on a clear day as you're leaving Melbourne, you can actually see some of the islands in the strait itself. And he had just radioed his position. So that's the first thing. It's not like he was lost in the vast tracts of the Pacific. The second thing is, he's not at all the first strange thing to happen here in the Bast Strait. This stretch of water has been spitting off strange tales since the first little sloops navigated it and charted it for the Royal Navy. In fact, the future King George V, when he was still a prince, sailing out of the Bast Strait and about to turn up the east coast of Australia, one evening the sky went red all around his boat, and there silently floated past a little bit above the water a mysterious and unknown ship, and they actually thought it might have been, and it might have been, the Flying Dutchman. So even prior to the age of air, the Bast Strait was giving people the heebie-jeebies. Now, it's a treacherous stretch of water, and there have been many, many, many ships lost in poor weather, which it has in abundance. I'm actually very lucky this morning. But there is something of a little cottage industry of catching the strange ones. The ones that vanish in beautiful weather, the ones that vanish in the middle of the day, the ones that vanish in plain sight. Once we get to the age of air, well, then it really starts to quite literally take off. The first story I want to share has a bit of a personal connection. The disappearance of the Amelia J in 2022, because she left my hometown, my home port, if you will, of Newcastle on the mainland, and vanished in reasonably clear weather here in the Bast Strait. Fair enough, one missing boat. Two planes that went looking for her also vanished. One of them flew into a cloud above, in broad daylight above Flinders Island, and did not fly back out. And the last one I want to tell you about is the Miss Hobart, which vanished in 1934. Again, completely clear skies. On a flight leaving from Launceston, from the city I'm in. No one ever saw it again. No wreckage was ever found. Now, does the Bast Strait contain treacherous seas? Yes. Do those treacherous seas contain deadly animals that will even attack boats? Also yes, but leaving aside all the many, many normal shipwrecks that you would get in such a treacherous gap of water, this is nevertheless Australia's Bermuda Triangle. This is a place where even to this day, fishermen will see strange lights in the sky and in the water. So what does all of this have to do with astrology? Well, it has to do with astrology's origins in the observation and understanding of signs and portents, strange things in the sky. This is one of Jacques Vallée's best books, which people don't really talk about. It's kind of a boring read because it's just a list of anomalies from around the world in the sky that stretch back over millennia, which is sort of the point, isn't it? This is the realization, things showing up in the sky, portending stuff that happens on Earth, that is that initial mouthfeel, that initial embodied response, which was then systematized and computerized in the sense of computing into different forms of astrology around the world. But astrology isn't just whether or not you're a good match from Derek in accounting. Astrology is a collection of shorthand understandings to sense make the world of sky country, the world of signs and portents and strange things. And you can get astrology to work without that understanding, but you can get it to work better once you have, on an individual or personal basis, come to terms with what kind of a gift and who gave it to us that astrology actually is. This is a quote I return to often on Rune Soup, which is from Dame Marilyn Strathern. And she says, "It matters what thoughts we think other thoughts with." And so the thoughts of astrology, it matters what thoughts we think them with. It matters if we think them from a cosmos of a community of beings, a cosmos where the sky isn't 100% apprehensible, that astrology is a second order effect of the first order effect of grappling or engaging with sky country. And once you think thoughts with those thoughts, you do open up the interoperability and compatibility across systems that had previously not been compatible. And that was there from the beginning. The Renaissance astrologer Girolamo Cardano observed or commented, "Do you think, or what do you think Homer and Virgil had in mind when they made all the gods, Mars and Venus and whatever, battling, right? What do you think was going on there?" It's a realization that the signs and portents of sky country, messy though they are, flow down as messy foreshadowings of things here on Earth. And actually Seneca said that. He basically observed that whatever happens is a foreshadowing or portent of the next thing to happen. People, historians at least, assume that Seneca, when he looked at astrology, found it wanting. He did, that's not wrong necessarily, but it's not because he was a very rational man who was putting aside pseudoscience. He was a very rational man who realized that just as, and this is more or less a quote, I'm paraphrasing, but just as the wick on your oil lamp will flutter before an oncoming storm, everything that happens is telling you about something that's about to happen. And you can't bundle all of that up into astrology. In that respect, Seneca was rational. You can't bundle all that up into astrology. Astrology is one of those, it's a good bundler, but it's one of those things that relies on a world, a sublunar world of flow and movement, right? It relies on everything foreshadowing the next thing. So that's one of the two main thrusts of the course that we're actually going to be looking at. How to predict, that's the first one, based in this understanding of time magic, of astrology's plural's origin in this layer of signs and portents of high strangeness. And the other hand or side of this course is how to be. So how to predict and how to be. How to be with this moment. What is yours to do in, well, just speaking frankly, this apocalypse, this turning point, this pachakuti, this triplicity change, whatever language you want for it. How to be with this moment, how to predict and how to be. And the be part will be relying on some philosophers in the European tradition, like Henri Bergson, who have something to speak to about our metaphysics of time, and also, inevitably for a Rune Soup course, a comparison around the world of different frameworks of time. Because, and you know, I checked this with my surprisingly bigger than I realized library of astro books. Astrologers aren't typically taught a metaphysics of time. They might be taught how astrology might work, because it does, but like, that's different. We have inherited from the West, from the Enlightenment and, dare I say, materialism, what I call the glass beads theory of time, which is that time is just little flavorless, clear units. Astrology can put them in different bundles, so different cycles, right? A Venusian cycle, or a day, or a zodiacal month, right? So it can have different buckets, but it's still just glass beads that are in it, in the same amount of glass beads as you'll get in a clock at Grand Central Station. And instead what I'm going to be sharing is something that Martine Prechtel might call approaching the holy. This is how to be with this moment. To approach the holy in a time magic context is to understand the full cosmological implications of signs and portents coming from sky country, that we have systematized into different forms of astrology. This is what I mean by the title of this video, falling in love with the powers behind astrology. Time magic is that turn, is the turn, the approach to the holy. And in that process, which is going to be different for each person, you're going to find the how to be of this moment. It is also going to make you better at predicting, but we're talking about how to be. Astrology fascinates me because it began with an approaching the holy approach, right? Like Babylon and cataloging different signs and portents, which weren't just planetary movements. It was storms, it was other funny things they saw in the sky, and then there would be locusts, or a prince would get sick, or what have you. So we began with that open-ended turn to, there is something going on up there that provides uneasy foreshadowings of things that happen down here. And humans being very ingenious, we built a whole bunch of little computers, methods of computing for, or built on top of that. But now if you look, and I like this by the way, don't get me wrong, now if you look at how contemporary astrology is practiced, it reminds me very much of what physics in the 20th century had to do, which is called shut up and calculate. As in just park the implications of quantum physics and just calculate, right? We have all these things in the modern world that's built on quantum physics, which sidebar I don't think is actually correct. It doesn't matter. Physicists aren't expected to sit with the implications of quantum physics actually working. In the same way, a lot of astrology, now that you can just pull it up and use it in a late capitalist context, operates in the same shut up and calculate. And that's fine. Like I said, I certainly enjoy having Astro Gold on my iPad and so on. Like, obviously, let's not go back to little scratching in the sand in Iraq. We can do a little bit better. But making that approach to the holy requires a rewilding of the heart. When Martin Prechtel talks about what you offer in terms of sacred offerings, he gets you to answer the question, what does the thing you love love? Approach the holy like a lover. So what does Sky Country love? Time, doesn't it? Now, in a community of beings, I want you to sit with the idea that making room is making time. And more importantly, making time is making room. So even though we have access to, and literally thank God, very easy and useful technical expressions of multiple astrologies. That's down the how to predict line. Down the how to be line, the approach to the holy. What does the thing you love love? What does Sky Country love? And this is the ceremonial or ritual turn that is going to underpin the how to be section. So I'm going to be using terms like Sky Country, which I've already used, which is a term from Aboriginal Australia, or Hamakpacha, which is the Quechua rendering of Upper World. You can say Nuit, of course, but it's worth sitting with what holy it is you are approaching and understanding astrology as the second order effect, and sitting with what is the thing you love love, which is a refrain that we will of course refer to when we get to the planetary magic section of the course as well, because what does the thing you love love obviously lands in the, Jupiter, Mercury. What does the thing you love love when it comes to the how to be of offering and approaching the holy? That's going to work on every level. And finally, I want to address, inevitably, as is my wont, what is yours to do? And that's my way into explaining who this course is for. Magicians and astrologers, obviously. Now, there is an old saying, if you're at the head of the class, you're in the wrong class. So we're not going to be doing oppositions and squares and trines and so on. One, because you know that. But two, if you're thinking, I don't need another astro class, you are in the wrong class. You should be in this one, because it's not actually what it is. This will be the fullest exploration of my own blended cycle model, including the inputs into it and how on like a month by month or transit by transit basis you weight different things to get, as the name suggests, a blended forecast. So it's for magicians and astrologers, and it's also for people who are aware that this time it's different. There is a really low rent take that everyone thinks they're living at the end times, right? There's Monty Python jokes and so on. And that's historically true. You can find people who thought the world was going to end in 1000 AD and so on. But first of all, that's obviously not what we're talking about when we're talking about apocalypses and pachacutis and so on. That's not at all what we're talking about. But also, this time is different. And if you can't see that, you are clinging to a late capitalist, end of history, American privilege denialism. There isn't a single indicator anywhere that isn't flashing red. And so the structure of the course is to speak to that, but not to tremble in fear before it. We approach the holy here. The holy is often terrifying, right? It abducts people out of thin air right over there. But it's not a fear-based tone. How to predict and how to be. In the how to be is the feeling through on an embodied and emotional level of this moment. So those are the three categories of people who should join the membership linked up below to participate in this course. Magicians, astrologers, and people who, if you're not satisfied with either of those categories, are just vaguely aware that this time is different. And so what you're going to get out of it is being a friend to time, an actionable means of satisfactory relating for yourself and for time beings. And you're also going to get a method of prediction, or a pattern dance, if I'm looking for another way of saying it, that can improve your relating to the future. Let's say it like that. And you're also going to get a way to be with this moment. Because how we approach the holy and in what form structures the entire cosmos. And with that in mind, I want to return to the story of the disappeared Jack Valentich. Since he was a boy, Jack loved flight. He would make his dad go and take him to stand by the chain link fence outside the airport as a boy, and he'd watch planes come and go. He was also obsessed with UFOs. He loved sci-fi and UFO stories and would talk about them often. And he once told his mother while he was flight training that when he was up there, he felt like he was being watched. And actually not in a creepy way, but that when he was in the sky, he felt observed and companioned. And in a slightly more creepy way, he was pretty sure he saw or felt something in the weeks leading up to his disappearance. Jack Valentich loved sky country, and you could probably say that sky country loved him. What you seek is seeking you.